Hi all, welcome to this webinar and panel discussion on the emerging trends in DevOps in the year 2022. Here we are. It's a very interesting world that we are in 2022. But what is more interesting is the kind of panelists that we have today. So DevOps is a topic that everybody is familiar with, but at the same time, they have their own thoughts and concerns and roadmap as to how they would like to implement it within each of their organizations. So today we've got a star cast of panelists who would give us a semblance of an idea, a roadmap of things, an experience of having implemented. And they'll share these thoughts with you, the audience. And I hope you find this session extremely interesting. I'm your host for this evening. My name is Ranjit Shankar. I am the Customer Success Manager for Datamatics. So without further ado, I would like to now briefly introduce the speakers for today. So let's begin. So we have Mr. Deepak Mudalgekar, who is the Chief Technology Officer at SBFC Private Limited. He comes with over 30 years of industry experience. Welcome, Deepak.
Thank you.
Okay. So next we have Mr. Sachin Rane, who is the Head of Software Solutions at Datamatics. He comes with over 32 years of industry experience. Welcome, Sachin.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Mr. Scott Colby. He is the Director of Database Search and Technology at American Ancestors. He has over 17 years of experience in technology in the non-profit space. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Joe Maloney. He is the Executive Vice President of IT at One Touch Direct. He has over 40 years of industry experience, with 22 years of that in the contact center industry. So I welcome Joe.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Mahesh. Mahesh is the Senior Solutions Architect at Amazon Web Services. He comes with over 15 years of IT experience in public sector, higher education, enterprise, and greenfield industries. Welcome, Mahesh.
Thank you.
Okay, so with the introductions out of the way, gentlemen, so we would now like to hand this over to Sachin Rane, who will be the moderator for this panel discussion for the next 40 odd minutes. Sachin, over to you.
Thank you, Ranjit, and I welcome all my esteemed panelists once again. Thanks for your time. Before I begin talk about the topic that we have, just a minute of why we have chosen this topic and why DevOps is important. I will just introduce that with simple example that I normally give. So in any organization there are two teams. One is so for example development team, and one is support team or maintenance and operations team. So typically what happens is they tend to work in silos. And we need some mechanism so that these two teams can work cohesively and work very well with each other. So DevOps is a mechanism by which a development team and support team can work cohesively with each other, right? And then basically the life becomes simpler from a software development point of view, software support point of view, and that's basically a mechanism or basically set of tools, technologies which help development and operations or maintenance team to work in tandem with each other. So that's basically DevOps is all about. And the reason I know we have chosen this topic because it's important, it touches everybody's life in a typical organization. And that's why it's important that we talk about it, why it is important, how to implement DevOps, what are the emerging trends in this particular field, and what are perhaps do's and don'ts, what are the popular tools in this space. So we'll talk about that in next 40 odd minutes along with the experienced team that we have in this discussion. So let me then begin with Joe. Maybe you just want to talk about your organization journey, One Touch Direct's journey, about how you went to cloud. What are the significant milestones that you achieved so far?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sachin. So our experience may be, slightly different than everybody else's experience here on the panel, but we started our migration efforts probably about 4 or 5 years ago when we began to migrate or integrate, I should say, an application that we built internally, a contact center application that we built internally with Amazon Connect, which is AWS's contact center offering in the cloud. And so that application had originally been integrated with the Avaya platform. And we began that integration with Amazon Connect, like I said, about 4 or 5 years ago. And so at that time, we also migrated the application, which is not a cloud-first application, by the way, but we started to migrate that application to a small EC2 farm in the cloud. And so that was our beginning of the migration journey. And then post that initial migration effort, which was really just the integration with Connect and other Amazon services and hosting on EC2s, we began to use some other services on AWS. For instance, S3 for backup and file storage, other S3 needs. But we also started to utilize some of AWS's services for things like sentiment analysis, customer sentiment analysis, so that you can do real-time customer sentiment scores while the agents are actually on the call with the customer. We integrated the chat mechanism with AWS, and a number of other features of AWS, either directly or through AWS Connect. So it's been a slightly different type of effort. Now, what we've done since is we've begun to migrate our on-prem SQL Server databases to AWS. And that, it's been, to be honest with you, it's been a little bit of, fits and starts, So, the initial plan was to migrate SQL Server to RDS SQL Server. And, I thought it was going to be a fairly straightforward lift and shift to SQL Server on RDS. But we ran into some peculiarities with SQL on RDS. Nothing that we couldn't overcome, but since we made that initial migration, and we really never fully tested that migration, which is something I'll speak to later, I think. We have since had to migrate another database to an EC2 instance, so just strictly using EC2. And that seemed to be more straightforward. And the fact that, it was, we were able to create a mirror image of our on-prem server to EC2 with all the data and all of the other processes that were, hosted on that server seemed to be a really straightforward approach. But then we said, okay, well, then why can't we do that with our cluster? And rather than go to RDS, why can't we do that with our on-prem cluster and go directly to EC2s? And we tried that and we ran into a couple of issues, and our Datamatics friends have come to the rescue about that. And so we're engaged with Datamatics about how best to accomplish that. So it's been a little bit up and down along the way, but we're making headway. It's slow, but we're making headway. But we're a small shop, and we think that we've done a lot for who we are and the size we are, and been able to accomplish a lot. But we realized at some point we realized that we need some help, and so that's where Datamatics has come in. So we appreciate their effort in that. So that's been our journey so far.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So I think I also realized that you're also planning a DevOps at some stage in very near future. So we'll talk about that in a bit. But then thank you. I think both AWS and Datamatics has been trying to set your journey on cloud and then make it as seamless as it can be. So we'll continue to work with you on this. Thank you. So now let me go to Scott. Scott, in the DevOps, when you want to set out a DevOps in an organization, what should be the top goal as per you from a DevOps point of view?
Sure. So I think it's pretty simple, right? It's all about the products that we create and the services that we provide, right? That's what your development team and your operations team would be doing individually anyway. So it's really about just merging those two to provide that, to facilitate those goals, right? So, the main goal there really is to be able to continually provide new products and to continually provide enhancements to your existing products. And the kind of operations that DevOps support really facilitate that. I have found that kind of thing becomes particularly important in the nonprofit space, right? So we are generally kind of small and resources are often limited, right? Like we don't have a lot of people, we don't have a lot of cash to spend. So we need to be as efficient with our resources as we can possibly be. And development operations and those processes that help us maintain things and keep things moving and keep things organized go a long way for smaller organizations like ours that really need to be very, very careful about how we're spending our time and effort and energy.
Sure. So, and thanks, Scott. Deepak, your quick view on this?
Hi. I think DevOps, which I look at it as it's basically an extension of the agile development that you used to do earlier. And the way Scott mentioned, yes, the commercials are the key thing, and also planning is a key thing. Though you don't have the end in mind, because it's again an agile development that I see it, but a good collaboration between the teams and monitoring the expenses as well as the development is a key thing. Scott said is perfectly right. That's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think then the related question, Deepak, to you is how do you do a planning? Like what kind of planning will be required for a DevOps point of view or implementation?
See, the whole thing is, again, I look at DevOps as again a extension of agile development. It has to be a driven top down. Key thing is, like you mentioned, two bottles together. That collaboration between the development team and the business and users team is a key here. Because if that is not there, then you may not have a success instantly. And also how the management looks at it as it's a time to market is key thing that's looked at. But if you are not clear with your end objective, okay, there'll be changes, there'll be failures, but you have to overcome those things and keep moving on. So that's another second key thing, which I definitely look at it here. Third thing, very important thing, when you plan for the DevOps, ensure that your development team is very well aware of the business that you are getting into, the business users that you are getting into. And also at the same time, you need to ensure that your business users are aware of what the DevOps development is and what are the technologies used. I mean, they may not be able to know much, but at least they should be able to comprehend what that development means. So once that is there, then only you'll be able to have a good synergy and the resonance between the two teams. And again, another thing, when we have done this, so what I have done in our organization is that we started doing the development of the mobile app as well as the web applications. I have taken the very, you can say a shortcut here, because prior in HDFC Bank also, I started a charter of development in-house. And till then we were used to develop using a waterfall model, where end goals are clear. We know what exactly the expense is going to be, what going to be a TCO for the project is going to be, and how much time it's going to take. So you do all your function point analysis and come up with your estimates and put the planning and do your understanding document, then your releases, develop testing it thoroughly, and then move it to production. But here in this, it's not that. You're looking at something where we want to, when I say you, I'll not say you because it's a collaboration. We want to give to the business something quickly in particular intervals, so that there's something, start using it. And of course, there'll be variations, keep on making those changes and adjustments. So, and you align yourself with the business, the development team aligns with the business. Since, sorry, but I'm from the technology and development team, so I'll keep on saying you, but the whole thing is development team needs to be aligned with the business and take it forward. So these are the three things which are very important for us, and we had good failures also. So that reminds me of another thing, architecture. I think that's one area when you're developing something, a new product that is getting developed, ensure that the architecture is perfect. That's the base. Once you define the architecture, the rest of the things you can do a development on top of it, but have your base clear first.
Sure. Thanks, Deepak. I think the primary point which I captured from what you said is communication. Communication is key, right? So I think communication across all the teams is extremely important. So thanks for that. I think from architecture point of view, you always have Datamatics and AWS to work in tandem with you. So we're always there to support you, Deepak.
Yes, absolutely.
So thanks, Deepak. So now let me bring Mahesh into this. Mahesh, typical question that we get asked is what is there for us as in form of return on investment? Why should I go for DevOps, and what does it mean from returns that it gives me? So any thoughts on this as to how one should go about calculating, or any computations to be done on ROI? Your views
Sure,
on
thanks.
that?
Yeah, thanks, Sachin, and it's great to be here. So I think there are a few ways of looking at your return on investment in DevOps, right? I think there are multiple angles you can look. One of them definitely is, I think a couple of speakers already talked about, is speed to market and adding new features and stuff, right? So I think that is going to be important if you think about it on how many products or features you're going to release and how frequently you're going to release. Again, DevOps will also enable you to do more frequent releases. Again, I think frequency of the releases and how efficient are those are going to be important. So the more releases you do, the more feedback you get from your customers and improve your product as per their liking, you're going to have more retention and all of that, right? So eventually, I think that is one of your key things about looking at return on investment. And maybe one of the way you can measure it, how many products you are doing today, and after thinking about DevOps or teams that are going there, you can start to look at the metrics out of there, right? That would be one thing. The other thing I really think is very important, a lot of you talked about, is collaboration between your development and operations team, right? One of the things I did in my career as a DevOps lead was trying to capture the number of defects before and after again, right? I think that is another very easy thing to you to do. But once you start going with the DevOps process, again, I think Deepak talked a bit about challenges. It's not going to be an easy path just to integrate both. So it is going to be, you need to have certain playbooks and stuff. And again, I think improve the quality, improve the collaboration is going to be extremely important. And finally, overall, the way I would look at it is also improved product and improved quality of work in general, because now you are having operations team rather than just throwing away the product over the silo to operations. They are pretty much into the process, as Deepak said, as well as I think Scott talked a bit about, all the way from the start of the process, right? All the way from defining architecture. So if you are using, for example, the greatest and latest technology and your operations team is not aware, which happens a lot, when something goes wrong, you really are in trouble, right? So having them integrated and having them all the way through the process from day one and having them as part of Agile, I think it's going to be extremely important. And that is how you can start to measure, again, ROI using velocities and all of that.
I think you brought out a very wonderful point, Mahesh, is about before and after. So a typical way to get, and this is how we as Datamatics, we have seen in our implementation is before DevOps, how many releases, after DevOps, how many releases. So basically the velocity, what it was earlier and what velocity after DevOps. I think that's
Right.
the easiest to compute as to what returns you're getting. So good point.
And also the incremental changes that you do and how frequently, right? You're like, if you look at something like Amazon.com or AWS, they do thousands of changes every day on their websites. And as you know, people don't really realize what those small changes are, but they are collecting that real-time feedback, which is really important for any organization.
Excellent, excellent. I agree with you, Mahesh. Thanks a lot. So, and now we go back to Joe. Joe, I think in the initial, when we started your discussion, you said that obviously you talked about your journey to cloud and how AWS, and Datamatics has been working with you. From a DevOps point of view, what is that you're thinking within your organization? What's the roadmap that you have for DevOps?
Well, we've thought about this, for a number of years actually, and we've investigated, different tools and how to implement those tools, and we've talked to a number of vendors about it, and we haven't really engaged the Datamatics and AWS teams about DevOps yet because, I want to get through this data migration effort, but. Okay. But one of the things that has occurred to me over the years, when we talk about, and by the way, we've struggled with the way that we manage production releases. I mean, it's a manual effort. Like I said, we're a small shop, like Scott was talking about. We don't have a lot of resources. But we've struggled with it, but one of the things that occurs to me about this is that and maybe it's assumed, but I don't think that you can have a discussion about DevOps implementation without a discussion about test automation, and I think that that's really been our struggle over the years is QA. And, and for us, we've historically get backed up in QA because it's all manual, and my experience with test automation to date is limited, granted, but that it is maybe the biggest part of and the most time-consuming and costly part of implementing DevOps, and that's my perception, but I may be wrong, right? And so I think that the conversation, I think that and again, maybe it's assumed that you're talking about test automation as well, but I think that's an important part. And the other thing that's interesting to me about test automation in general is that, yes, there are tools out there, lots of tools out there that you can use for automated testing, but they're all geared towards, well, again, in my limited experience, they're geared towards, automating the test processes around, the API layer, right? But you still have a UI to worry about, right? So I don't, again, I think that I think what I want to do when we get to the DevOps conversation again is see how all of this folds together, right? Manual QA process, automated QA process, DevOps, production release process, et cetera, right? So that's the conversation that I think I want to have when we get there.
Sure. So Joe, thanks, and I think whenever you are ready, I think both AWS and Datamatics will be there with you, and we'll ensure that it's a success and grand success as far as DevOps is concerned. So we'll continue with our journey with you. Thanks, Joe. So Deepak, let me come back to you on DevOps point of view. When you implement, I'm sure there are some do's and don'ts. So you may want to talk about that briefly.
Sure. I really like the way Joe mentioned just now. I think that's a conflict which goes in our minds with 30 years experience when we have worked on the waterfall model successfully and seen the projects seeing the end of the tunnel or the light at the end of the tunnel, say after X months, and here we are expecting something, a quicker time to market, that conflict is always going to be there. And we also have faced this. So when we started with the DevOps, the key thing, testing. So it's like, I think there are so many tools available. That's another thing Joe said. So I'm not going to make it as a preaching station, but the thing is, we have gone through and we have experienced something which really brings it to the things that what you should do and what you should not. Again, see, so basically what everyone looks at it, the objective is a faster time to market, speed of deliveries. But when you're looking at that, and second thing is requirements are not 100% clear. Again, I'm going back to what Joe stated. So it's like, that's a conflict. So you have something in your mind, you want to do something and start achieving, keep on building on top of it. So it's a cultural shift which is there. And unless we embrace this cultural shift, it's going to be not easy. So when you look at the startups, the way they get into the DevOps and they keep on, moving the things faster, we could see that. And then a success to that is, again, going back to Joe's statement, the tools. There's so many tools available. If you have the right tools for the development, for the testing, for the, APIs integration. So if you have those things very well, and that's where I go back to my first point of having the construct, design, architecture to be good. And when I say architecture, you need to have all these things in place. And another challenge with this is, it's a moving target. So today you choose one tool, there's another tool coming up which is much better than this. So how you are going to cope up with that too. So there's an agility in that side also. So these are the things. But then again, when I said that, continuous monitoring, having the planning and deployment, and as well as the feedbacks, these are the very important things which you need to keep in mind. And this again is a completely revolving, that's a whole thing: develop, test, build. So it's like design, build, develop, test, again go back to the same cycle. It's completely agile methodology, very important for us. And again here, another don't be afraid of failures. You will have some failures, some of the releases will go wrong, and we have faced it. So though I'm smiling right now, but it's a tough time, because the moment that there are failures, you have another challenge of cost overruns. But you really don't know what the right cost is, because you're just again into that mode. So that's another thing which is there. So don't expect the 100% results immediately. You will not have a full-fledged solution. You will have the step by step. You keep on building that. So that's another thing. The only aspect in this which I want to mention is the security. Okay, when you're doing the DevOps development, you're into that mode. Again, we still will continue. And I have been into the finance sector. Security comes to a key. So we would like to have everything secure, and don't start applying all the rules of your application security standards document to the DevOps. That will not work. You have to look at what is really required, to start with, and then slowly start building on. So it's a hard way we have learned these things. Not easy to embrace this, but definitely it's a way which helps you better. And I have seen that in my, so what we did is that earlier we used to again do through the waterfall models. Now we have created a small development team in-house, which is doing my entire mobile applications development and my entire web application. I can see that within a couple of weeks, I'm having the releases. So there's a wow factor coming from a business. So there are benefits. So, and that's the thing. They're seeing the changes coming in quickly, which is very important. So that's what I would like to say.
Sure, Deepak. I think you made quite a few important points. One is be practical when it comes to security. Don't just, don't be too much panicky about security.
But that's very important, but you need to have some time. Yeah.
No doubt about that. And then also important point is there will be some failures. So you accept that there will be some failures. Yeah. Not to say everything will go absolutely all right from day zero. So yeah, a good point. So Scott, your views on this? Actually, what Deepak said, maybe you just want to reflect upon what has been your experience in this do's and don'ts.
Sure. So it's it's interesting, and I think we've talked a lot about a lot of different technologies and a lot of different things today. I think kind of the most important thing is remaining organized, right, and making sure that you have a tool that can help you do that. The project management tool really is probably the most important part of our DevOps experience, right? We have multiple teams in different time zones, different pieces of technology. We've got build processes, we've got Git repositories, we've got AWS, we've got so many things going on that combine into this one single search product that we offer. I don't know how we would do it without a really solid piece of project management software. And I think that that is so key to so many of the things that we have talked about today. Even when you come back to what Mahesh was talking about in terms of just like establishing what your ROI is, right? Like if you're not tracking the things that you do and the time spent on them and the outcomes, you're just not going to be able to do those kind of calculations. So having a tool where you are really kind of collecting all of the different pieces and parts that we talked about today, and tracking it and having something that can generate metrics and just like, you know, being able to go to a single page and being able to look at everything that's going on within our DevOps journey is like, I don't know how I would do my job without it. So I think that that is a big do and a big strong recommendation. It has been beyond useful for working with our friends at Datamatics, right? Like we can just collaborate in there as much as we need to, and it's just a really fantastic way to keep everything organized. We use Jira, by the way, if anybody is interested in our exact implementation of project management software.
Sure. Thanks, Scott. I think that was very useful input. Thank you so much. Mahesh, let me come back to you because this is a very interesting and always evolving field as any technologies, which is DevOps. So what, as Sbu Experience, what do you see as like some of the trends that we should be aware of and be perhaps ready for?
I think, again, some of the key trends I have been seeing, right, with AWS and in general in the industry are like pretty much what Joe and Scott and Deepak are doing in the sense moving to cloud, right? Using cloud as their first go-to, like a cloud-first strategy is what we are seeing. And for companies which are already on premises, how do I do that data migration, or how do I do step in first and then modernize all of those applications? So most of them are thinking about that. And if anything new is coming up, using cloud for that. At the same time, thinking also as part of designing that cloud infrastructure, right? Thinking about how can I do it as a pay-as-you-go model, right? So as every business has, there will be spikes and there will be times where you really do not need that capacity. So thinking about that, and also thinking a lot about automation has been a really important trend that I think everyone is looking at, is doing infrastructure as code, right? Everything where you can easily replicate it. I have been seeing a lot of people talk even on security. I think Deepak brought that as a policy as a code as well, is picking up a lot these days. Rather than having it just infrastructure, now let's build even security as part of your entire coding process, right? So when you put all of these infrastructure as a code, policy as a code, and all of that into the DevOps hand, and give that to these development and development teams, they now have the capability to spin up a new environment, spin up a new security that is only needed for that specific thing, and be able to go live and replicate the exact production environments for everything. The other thing I'm seeing is a lot of again scalability kind of coming into most of these, right? So as you're designing these DevOps, I'm seeing a lot of companies adopt into microservices and event-driven architectures, right? So where you might have these bits and pieces and where you want to scale them up, and also thinking about, because again, if you think about more from a monolithic approach to a microservices approach, all the way from error logging, error handling, alerting, everything is so different, right? So you might have to do some unlearning and relearning. So I think there is a lot of enablement, to be honest, that has to go through that as well. I'm seeing that happening a lot. There is a lot of talks. I think Datamatics, Sachin, your team here is doing this talk for one of that reasons, right? So again, at AWS, we do have a lot of services to support most of this, as pretty much all the speakers talked about. You use AWS behind the scenes. So we have pretty much a lot of tools for DevOps as well. And we are seeing a lot of adoption increases around that, like the code commit, code build, and stuff like that. And pretty much, I think, eventually going back to what we started off with is trying to make very frequent releases, right? Is a trend that we want. That's what business wants today. It is the business, if they have an idea, the time that it takes from that idea inception to implementation, they want it less than weeks, whereas before it used to be years, right? As all of us know. So now they want it, if they have an idea, they want to see how are my customers responding, right? So those are kind of the things that we are not only seeing just on the development side, but also business is starting to think and evolve over the overall adopting this DevOps practices.
Sure. So if I may want to summarize these trends that just talked about, I think first thing you spoke about perhaps is the cloud adoption. So continued cloud adoption is number one trend that we see. Second, I think we talked about automation. Third, perhaps is security or prioritize security, like something like DevSecOps becoming pretty normal now and very well adopted. One thing which I also see when I talk to my customers is about performance monitoring. I think that element also is becoming kind of a trend as far as DevOps is concerned. And I think you spoke about scalability. I think I agree with you on that part. I think the microservice architecture that you spoke about, that is getting lots of adoption at Datamatics. We also seen that in the market. So I think these are 5 or 6 things that are very prominent trends that we see, and much thanks for bringing them very clearly. Much appreciated. Scott or Joe or Deepak, anything you want to add in this, or I think we covered as far as trends are concerned, right? Or anything that you, in your perspective, you see as a trend? Anyone?
More than trend, that microservices reminds me one more thing. Having a good repository and documentation while you're doing the DevOps is very key thing, because now everything is APIs, open APIs, microservices oriented. Ensuring there's the right documentation that is there with you, so that you know that what kind of a API or a microservice can be used at what point in time. A key to the DevOps success.
Well, thanks. Scott, let me come to you now. I think we would always want to understand some of the tools that perhaps you have used as far as DevOps is concerned. So you may just want to talk about that so that all of us understand practicality. I like practical implementation of DevOps. Which tools typically people use?
Sure. So, I mentioned the Gold Star tool that we use, the Jira, just for managing everything that we've got going on. We are also, all of our infrastructure really is in the cloud these days. Everything is in AWS, and that has been super solid. And it's great too, in that kind of architecture really prepares you for unforeseen events and consequences, right? Like when we had to go completely remote at the beginning of the pandemic, like our team had no problem, right? Everything we were doing was already in the cloud. So, I laugh and I tell people that, even when we were at our desks, technically we were working remote. So we had the practice, we were ready to roll, and all of that was there and ready to go. Another very important tool to have is something that manages your build processes, right? Like if your code is not getting into the right places the way it should, then you kind of have a big problem there. You've got a bottleneck that needs to be solved. So maintaining that and having that kind of workflow work really well is super important as well. We use TeamCity for that. We may review that and see if there are other more appropriate options out there. One other thing that I wanted to touch on that you mentioned is a trend that is something that we are going to be looking at pretty deeply this year is the scalability, right? So on an average day, our web traffic can be very different from what we see when we get a huge spike, right? But because we have to be prepared for these spikes that we may not necessarily foresee, we have to keep our baseline architecture, at a certain level, at a certain height. So one of the big things that we want to look at this year, just tying back to what you had said prior, is containerization, so that we can build these smaller, microservices essentially that we can scale down to save on operating costs when, on some random Tuesday when we're not seeing a lot of business. But then, on a Saturday when we are, in the news for something and the traffic spikes, well, that can just scale up and take care of us. So I think that whatever containerization tool we land on via AWS will end up being one of our absolute favorite things within the organization.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Scott. I think this is very useful. So I think we covered a lot. We started with typically why DevOps, why it is important. From there, we spoke about how to go about implementation, what are the do's and don'ts, how do I calculate the return on investment, typically what are the trends that we're seeing, and what tools, practical tools being used in DevOps. So I think we're coming to an end of our very fruitful discussion. So I just want to go once again with the panelists and just closing remarks that you may have. So I'll start with Joe. Any quick closing remarks that you may want to have?
No real closing remarks. I look forward to continuing our journey and our migration, obviously, and I would like to at some point down the road, look at re-architecting some of our applications as well, and make them more cloud friendly, and take advantage of some of the things that Scott was talking about. Yeah, so I'm happy to have been here and have shared our experiences so far.
Thank you, Joe. Scott, any quick points?
First off, thanks for having me today. This has been a pleasure. It was great to meet everybody and to talk about what we do. I think the biggest takeaway that I have heard and thought about today is just, DevOps is a very powerful thing that can really transform your organization. But if you're going to do it, make sure you do it in an organized fashion.
Thanks, Scott. Mahesh, anything from you?
Again, I think a lot of us talked a lot about advantages and of DevOps getting there and the journey. I think understanding DevOps, trying to customize it for your organization, your needs is going to be very important too. And again, at AWS, I know we have a lot of services which help. And I know Datamatics is a great partner of ours. We work with you on a continuous basis. So yeah, let us know if there is any way we can help you in your journey or share any of our best practices and stuff like that. Happy to.
Sure, Mahesh. Thanks a lot. Deepak?
Yeah, I'll say the key to the success of DevOps is nothing but collaboration and monitoring, and choosing the right application to start with as a first step. And once you have it and once it's done right, definitely you'll start seeing the benefits of DevOps. Basically, time to market, what I talked about, that which everyone is talking about. Yes, you'll definitely see it. There is a merit in doing it as far as you choose the right products, because there are some projects which definitely may not be suitable for DevOps. That also, with my experience, I can say that some of them still would like to go through the waterfall model, but it's a business agility that you need to serve through DevOps. That's key from my side.
Sure, Deepak. Thanks a lot. I think I'll just, from my point of view, I think I'll just go back to my bottles, and then I say that both development and operations teams, they look like same. So there's good integration between both of them. That is payoff for you. Thanks for your time. So Ranjit, over to you. Any closing remarks?
Well, no, I think you've said it all, Sachin, and thanks for thanks to all the panelists who actually shared their insights with us so far. I think it's just amazing to see diverse perspective from technology experts from different industries. And it's just so nice to compare and contrast the different style of DevOps that people are thinking about. Some people are preparing the foundation for DevOps. Somebody else is halfway through the journey in that, and some others are harping on tools. So I think we had a good melange of thoughts coming together in a way I haven't experienced before. So I hope the audience had a good time. I think now we'll slowly drift towards the Q&A session, and we can probably take a few questions from the audience. I'm sure they would have been waiting with bated breath to perhaps ask a few questions. So at this point, I would like to take a pause and probably go towards the audience. Hey, just wondering at this point if anybody in the audience is having questions. I'd really appreciate if you can type in your questions in the questions tab, and I'll be happy to answer some of them. So let me see now, what is it that the audience has come back with? Okay, so there's a question here. So perhaps Sachin and some of the other panelists, might be interested in answering this. So the question is, where is the boundary or in between DevOps and cloud adoption? How are these two things related in terms of the adoption? Sachin, you want to take a dig at this? Perhaps you can unmute yourself while you do so.
Yeah, absolutely. The question is around DevOps and DevOps on cloud. Is that how I read it, Ranjit?
So, where is the boundary or the collaboration between DevOps and cloud adoption? Where do these two things intersect?
So DevOps can be on-premise, DevOps can be on cloud. So it's actually it's just that it's a mechanism that can be implemented across. So honestly, from my perspective, whatever I have seen, actually, customers have implemented DevOps on-premise in on-premise form uh, as well as cloud on cloud as well. So honestly speaking, DevOps is just a mechanism that can be implemented across any form of implementation as such. So I don't see an issue at all.
Okay, I can see. Okay, so one more question here from the audience, and it says, which are some of the most popular DevOps tools?
Yeah, I can take that. Searching here,
Yeah,
but if any of my panelists want to answer, Scott. So let me just answer that from my perspective. I think whatever I have seen, the popular DevOps tools are some of the tools that I have seen the customers using are like Selenium, Jenkins, Docker, or even JIT. So these are some of the tools that I have seen customers using as the most popular tool from DevOps point of view.
okay. I see one more question here which says, what are some of the important DevOps key performance indicators?
Fair enough. So, Deepak, Scott, anyone
Yeah,
wants to
hi, this
answer?
is Deepak here. I think that's a very good question that's asked, and I think I repeated this in my conversation earlier also. It's continuous monitoring of your development, and to start with basically your basic architecture, choosing a right product for development, and then the basic setting the basic architecture very right, so that which is scalable and also should be able to take care of all your requirements at one go, and then slowly start building your entire development stack. And as you build, as you go, you start delivering it to your end user customer. And the what I mentioned right now, those 5 points are going to be your KPIs. So milestones, monitoring, having the right architecture.
I would like to add there, Deepak, perhaps thanks for that. I think DevOps allows you to actually have a good integration with development and operations teams. And because
Yes.
of which actually your development frequency, which earlier perhaps used to do one deployment in a month, I mean, just for example. Now, because of DevOps, perhaps you can do a deployment once in a week. So
Yep.
development frequency could be one of the good key performance indicator because of DevOps, before DevOps and after DevOps.
Very true. And don't be afraid of the failures. You may have one or two failures in between, but that's fine.
Sure. Ranjit?
Okay, we have a few more questions trickling at this point. Um, so Mahesh, I guess you may have muted yourself. Please check your microphone. Meanwhile, yeah, here's another question that says, how is DevOps different from Agile methodology? Pretty basic question, but I think definitely worth answering because these things can blend into one another pretty easily. So, who wants to take that question? I can see um, Joe there. There is Mahesh. Mahesh, you want to take that question?
Sure. I think with agile methodology, you have more of the focus on performance of the team and how the team is doing and how can you have more collaboration. Whereas DevOps primarily talks about how do you integrate all these multiple teams into forming that agile team so that you can have everything that you need, right? So I think the way you look at it is pretty similar. Both of them play very well one into one and another, and it is basically how do you form the team and how do you operate more efficiently is kind of the way I would look at it.
Okay, thanks for that. I think Sachin and Mahesh and Deepak, I think we're really privileged to have you on this session. So let me now move on to the next question. We have a few more minutes on the clock, mind you. So what are the different phases in DevOps is one of the questions being asked here. So who's comfortable taking this question, gentlemen? Between Deepak, Joe, Mahesh, Sachin, Scott, you want to take a dig at this?
Sure, I'll take a crack at that. So this is Scott. So I think the phases are, so it's interesting, right? So I guess if we're talking about the bigger DevOps journey, the phases really are not all that different from any other piece of project management, right? You're identifying your deliverables and the people you need to involve in the project. You're identifying all your different milestones along the way, all your different metrics and things along those lines. Once you are more involved in DevOps, things of course go from the macro view to the micro view. For us, that looks like 2-week sprints essentially. So we try to do everything, we bundle our work so that we can do a release of whatever we have every couple of weeks. Within that time period, of course, there's that get together at the beginning to identify the next issues in the backlog that we want to tackle. There are multiple check-in meetings through the course of the sprint. I believe we have 4. We meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays to make sure that everybody has their ducks in a row. And then, of course, there is the testing of the new features that are part of the DevOps workflow. Revisiting them if necessary, right? If something doesn't test out the way that you may have expected it to. And then once everything is looking good, you've got your deployment and another round of testing on production, of course. And once all that's done, you kind of look at it and mark everything is taken care of, do a little review on what worked and what didn't, and you start the cycle all over again. So it's a very iterative, cyclical kind of process.
Okay, thanks for that, Scott. So I think at this point, I'm really not seeing any additional questions out there. So somebody's raising their hand though, but it's not quite sure if it is Dave who's doing that. So Dave, so you write in and say that's a great session and thanks for including me. Yeah, likewise, it's our pleasure to have you on this webinar as well. So yeah, I think we're kind of out of time. So I just want to thank everyone, each and everyone, starting from the panelists, Deepak, Joe, Mahesh, Sachin, Scott, for having taken the time to be part of this wonderful session on the emerging trends in DevOps in 2022. I also want to thank the audience for having taken the time to register and attend this wonderful conversation, and be sure to watch out for additional webinars and panel discussions in the near future. If you want to watch this session on demand, we'll shortly be uploading on it on our website, so you can also see it there, or if you can just share it with your team, that'll also be nice. And if you have a business challenge that you want to discuss, or you have a business goal that you want to meet, generally around DevOps or cloud or any of these areas, do drop an inquiry on our website and we would be happy to assist as well. So until then, I would probably take your leave, and I hope you have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks a lot, everyone, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.